Ecological restoration recreates healthy ecosystems, and that brings back adaptive capacity, and these are all important things for both biodiversity and climate change and addressing those twin crises. So the key thing is that we're looking at large scale, and we're looking into the future, and we're looking and working collaboratively. That's the basis of it, really. And that the work that we're doing together needs to be greater than the sum of its parts. That's the key part of the partnership. And that this is to benefit nature, climate and people. Hi, I'm Jeremy Roberts. I have a degree in environmental science, and I've worked in the conservation world advising farmers and other land managers for many years. Now I'm the programme manager for the Cairngorms Connect project in Scotland, in the Highlands. Yeah, I'm happiest outside. I love mountain biking and hill walking. I've just discovered bike packing. I love being in the garden, and I do a bit of drawing too. So Cairngorms Connect is a fascinating project at a landscape scale, providing ecological restoration and nature-based solutions. So things like flood alleviation, carbon sequestration, so real benefits to people too. So all of the partners share a 200-year restoration vision, and the primary aim is collaborative restoration of three main habitats really: forests, peatlands and rivers and floodplains. And the idea here is that by working together, by looking over the fence and working together, we achieve something that is greater than the sum of its parts. So the partnership formed in 2014, and it's a combination of 4 land managing partners. One is an environmental NGO, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. Another is a private landowner, Wildland Limited. And then the other 2 are government agencies, Forestry and Land Scotland and Nature Scot. So those are the land managing partners, but in addition, the Cairngorms National Park Authority is a 5th supporting partner. For some of the ecological restoration we want to achieve here, we know it's going to take 200 years. So we've looked at the ways and the pace at which the forest expands, the way it expands, and we know that to reach the natural altitudinal limit will take 200 years. And we know that for some of the peatland recovery, which is very damaged, it will also take a very long time. We're at a high altitude and a high latitude, so recovery processes are very slow. So in UK terms, this is huge. It's the biggest habitat restoration project in Britain. It covers 60,000 hectares or 600 square kilometres, and within the national park it's about 13%, so it's a huge share of the national park. And we're also 20% of the catchment of the River Spey, which is Scotland's second largest river. So in those terms we can have a real impact on what happens within the catchment.
Yes, it is a very long time for the community, but it's essential for the kind of scale and type of ecological restoration we want to do here, to bring the community on board and to feel like we are listening to what they want. We've also embarked on a 60-year vision, which will work, hopefully, to get them engaged. The key benefits for us are that we are doing some very ambitious long-term ecological restoration, and that a key part of that being successful is having the buy-in of people that live nearby. We can't achieve what we want to achieve here without the local community supporting us and encouraging us. And the key benefits for the community are a sense of belonging and ownership of this really beautiful, spectacular place that they live nearby. We all know that nature is really important for people to have access to. It's important for strong communities, and we hope that in 60 years the local communities here will feel a really strong sense of ownership and belonging here.
So when we started in 2014, it really was about ecological restoration at a landscape scale and in partnership. As climate change and net zero have moved up the agenda, and as more is known about the importance of landscape scale restoration for climate change, we're seeing that the work we're doing is becoming much more important in terms of reducing carbon emissions, increasing carbon sequestration, and providing adaptation to the consequences of climate change. So we've looked particularly at the RSPB's Abernethy Reserve, but more generally we've looked at the trends we can expect, and really it's what we're expecting globally. So changes in the trends in precipitation, so probably more significant events, maybe wetter summers, maybe occasionally more severe winters. More significantly, as temperature increases, that's going to have the biggest impact on the higher altitudes. And we're also predicting that the woodland, the tree line, will move up the mountains over time, probably about 100 metres altitude with every 1 degree of average temperature rise, so it will be very significant here. So as temperature and rain change, in particular, we can see an increased flooding risk from the Spey. It's a huge river with many communities downstream. So with more precipitation, there's a higher risk of peak flooding. And the other thing we're seeing, and it's happening already really, is a change in the timing of different elements of the ecology, where invertebrates may not be emerging at the same time as birds are hatching and needing to eat those invertebrates. So those are the kinds of changes that we're most worried about. So the project is structured around 3 habitat restoration projects. One is woodlands, another is peatlands, so high altitude bogs and lower altitude bog woodlands, and river and floodplain restoration. So we're doing 2 things with the forest. We are improving and restructuring the existing forest areas for biodiversity, and we're looking to expand the forest to its natural limit. So we have about 130 square kilometres of existing forest here, and we know by looking at soils and aspect and so on that we can expand the forest by another 130 square kilometres, and then beyond that, in the higher montane areas, 50 square kilometres of montane woodland. So within the existing forest, much of which is plantation, we are restructuring those forests by creating gaps and creating deadwoods, using ring barking and pulling over trees. So that's one of our measures. Another is that we're removing non-native invasive conifers like Sitka spruce and lodgepole pine, which pose a threat to the native woodlands. And then in terms of expansion of the forest, it's a combination of natural regeneration by deer control and some planting of underrepresented species that we know should be here. So within the partnership we have the biggest remnants of ancient Caledonian pinewood that are left in Scotland, so it's a really important area for those, and we don't do a huge amount to them. They are dominated by Scots pine, which you can see around me, but there are also rowan, aspen, alder, birch, juniper, so plenty of other species, and these are the species that actually, when we do planting, that we're adding into the mix to try and boost that diversity. But within the old pinewood forests themselves, we do very little at all. So we have around 10,000 hectares of peat-rich habitats here. Most of those are high altitude blanket bogs, and they've been damaged by overgrazing for many, many decades. And lower down we have bog woodlands which have been drained and planted with non-native conifers. For the two, the restoration approach is the same. It's either using logs and turf in the forest to make dams, or at higher altitudes using granite blocks which are used to create the initial dams, which are then filled in by the sediment. The outcome that we're looking for, as well as habitat improvement, is that we see a slowing of the movement of the water through the catchment and increased storage capacity of water, which then helps to reduce downstream flood risk for communities in the area. So peatlands are a huge store for carbon. They're really important nationally and globally. And we find that with our damaged peatlands, there is a consequence that the peat is oxidized and we are losing carbon to the atmosphere. So by restoring the peatlands, we prevent that loss to the atmosphere. We increase capacity for sequestration and for long-term storage. So many of the rivers we have and the floodplains have been heavily modified. So what we're doing, and that modification has been for example, for agricultural benefit. What we're doing now is removing some of those straightened sections and returning meanders. We're enabling the river to flood more naturally onto the floodplain rather than stay in river channels. So that then enables the water to slow its movement through the catchment, and that then reduces the risk of downstream flooding. Yes, there are two additional benefits really. One is that the water quality. So a more wooded catchment makes for cleaner water really, which is great for recreation. It's an important area for water recreation here. And the other is water temperature. So a wooded catchment keeps the water temperature down. Elsewhere in Scotland we're seeing water temperatures rising in rivers, and that affects species like salmon. So cooler rivers are better for salmon, so our rivers are tending to be better for those migratory fish. So the biggest and most significant cross-cutting measure that we're doing is reducing deer numbers. And deer numbers in the highlands are quite a hot issue. But we know that by reducing deer numbers we can expand the forest through natural regeneration, and it also helps the peatlands and other habitats to recover too.
So deer management is really essential for habitat restoration. Deer are a natural part of the environment, but for a long time their numbers have been far too high, and so high that ecological restoration just can't exist. So populations have gone in some areas from as high as 15 deer per square kilometre. Now the government is trying to get that down to about 10 deer per kilometre squared, but actually here we're operating at deer levels that are around maybe 2 to 3 per kilometre squared, and that's allowing the habitat to recover while still in the presence of deer, because they do a really good ecological job of moving seed around and breaking the forest up a little bit. So in the absence of any natural predators, we have to step in and take the deer population down a little bit, and according on the habitat, that brings a whole wealth of benefits. So soil health can improve as the forest improves. The leaf litter comes back down to the soil every year, improves the soil, and that makes it better for a whole host of other species. In terms of peatland, it will help the peat bind on the hill with less trampling and less erosion, which improves water quality, because after a rainfall event, less peat will be dragged into the rivers, which will then ultimately make it down into the lochs as well. By controlling the deer numbers, wetlands can really benefit directly, where you can limit the number of deer on the wetland. That will mean that there's less selective grazing pressure on the wetland, so all species can thrive rather than the most nutritious species being grazed away.
So the Cairngorms Connect team is kind of like the oil in the wheels. It facilitates the partners working together and to deliver more than they would individually. So we have a Cairngorms Connect partnership board, and the board is comprised of one person from each of the 4 land managing partners and somebody from the National Park Authority, and they're all senior people from each partner, which is quite important. They are able to make quick decisions about governance, about budgets and land management decisions. And the key thing is that they've met every month, almost continuously since 2014. So we have that cohesion at a senior level that works incredibly well in a partnership like this. Below board level we have 4 operational groups, and each of those groups draws its membership from across the partnership. We have one which is a planning and delivery group, which is focused entirely on the restoration element. We have one which is about communications and involvement, so how we promote the partnership and how we get local communities and others involved. There's another one which is the deer practitioners group, so that's the people that are out here delivering the deer management work, so they meet on a regular basis. And then the final one is a Cairngorms Connect Scientists Working Group, and they look at both the existing science projects and they evaluate incoming science propositions from various institutions that we might see.
Cairngorms Connect Partnership has around 59 full-time equivalent employees, so it's a massive partnership with loads of different people, from administrators, scientists, communication experts, visitor experience officers, deer stalkers, a whole range of different people involved in the partnership. So it's really important that all these people feel a part of the partnership and feel involved and together as one group, as one partnership. So day to day we have a WhatsApp group, which might sound a bit casual and a bit informal, and that's kind of the point. The WhatsApp group is designed to kind of share mini updates from your day, kind of inspiring photos or images, what you've seen, what you're up to help people stay connected on a day-to-day level with what's going on across the partnership. And that's a really useful tool and really easy to set up, and obviously very low maintenance, just as a really good way of feeling together as one partnership. So alongside the WhatsApp group, we also have in-person gatherings and meetups and knowledge exchange events, ranging from quite technical site visits to get the partnership staff together to go and have a look at a specific site and have a chat about what's happened there. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got things like barbecues and partnership social events. So last summer we did a partnership football match with various teams from the different partners, and obviously had a barbecue there as well, which was great. A really nice way of bringing people together for a casual chat over a venison burger and a game of football. So involving community in our restoration work is really, really important for Cairngorms Connect. In order for this work to be sustainable and to survive long term, it needs to be people focused and people need to be at the heart of it. So we work with local communities through school groups and visits and workshops, getting schools out and involved in our restoration work, as well as going into schools to talk about the work we're doing. We have a number of volunteers across the whole partnership, well, more than a number, I don't know the exact number, but it's probably be a big one across the whole partnership, helping with the restoration work. So for example, recently with a team of about 30 volunteers, we carried 1,000 downy willow saplings into the Cairngorms as part of our montane scrub restoration work. And this was a really beautiful community focused day with people there with their sisters or their parents or their friends, all coming together to carry these 1,000 and just over 1,000 saplings deep into the Cairngorms. So that was a really special day of community involvement in our work. Beyond that, we obviously work a lot with local businesses and contractors, so I think around 80% of funding is spent within 50 miles of the partnership area, so we work a lot with local businesses and local contractors to actually deliver this habitat restoration work. And then obviously we have a lot of community events, so guided walks, writing workshops, art workshops. This week we've got a workshop on beetle identification and deadwood creation, so a whole range of different events and community focused events and workshops for people to get involved with.
So the benefits are always going to be greater, whether it's for biodiversity, climate or people, if we work at a bigger scale. Wildlife needs big scale. Maybe not for the ants, but when we're talking about golden eagles or capercaillie, we need to be working at big scale. When we're talking about nature-based solutions for flooding, we need to be talking about big scale. So being connected across 600 square kilometres confers all those benefits. In terms of the time frame, well, the restoration we're talking about, reaching the altitudinal limit for forest, restoring peatlands at high altitude and high latitude, that takes a long time. So we need to have a 200-year vision, and we need to move at the pace of nature. So at this scale and over this period, we can increase the adaptive capacity of the environment here, and we can deliver something that's much more resilient and much more robust in the face of all the things that we can expect from climate change, whether it's fire or disease or extreme weather events. Build a vision, build an inspiring vision, get people involved as early as you can, and get people directly involved, and just go for it. You know, it can be life-changing for local people as well as for the individuals that are involved on a day-to-day basis.